Good evening. I'm Mayor Cochi, in case you didn't know. But I want to welcome you all tonight for this public hearing for a new potential, I don't want to call it a business, operation in town that I want you to hear about. This meeting is as a courtesy. It wasn't required by law that we have it. We could have just did legislation and passed it. But I want to let you know, we did this, like I say, as a courtesy. We heard the presentation. We thought the public should know what we're talking about. There's been so much misinformation out there. And we have so many of these, we call them the keyboard warriors, start writing stuff on Facebook or wherever that have no clue what they're talking about. And what burns me up about that is not one person has called me to say, hey, what's going on? But they'll listen to these keyboard warriors. And we have a person going door to door in one of the wards putting papers in mailboxes, which is against federal postal laws, and stirring up things. We have nothing to hide. That's why we're doing this. We have had no decision on this. But we wanted to bring it out into public because we knew once it did become public and the application was made to maybe do something, that we would get all kind of this misinformation going, and it just makes me crazy. Nobody ever calls me to say, what's the truth? They make up these things, they type and send them out without knowing anything. And we are not hiding anything. There has been no decision made on this yet. We are gonna listen as council, just like you guys are gonna listen, and give them the attention they deserve. We will have a question and answer. Like I say, no decisions have been made, no promises have been made. The state came to us with a proposal, and we thought it was important enough to let everybody know what we're looking at. And we are going to make an informed decision that is best for the city of Bedford. Not best for me, not best for Mike or anybody else. What's best for the city of Bedford as we approach all topics that pertain to the city. So that's my soapbox. And I want everybody to listen. Like I said, no decisions have been made, but we want you to hear the presentation and pay attention. And like I say, we will have question and answer after. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike to introduce our speaker. And again, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Gary. Good evening, everyone. I won't continue to chat because I know we want to get right to the presentation. Just a real quick kind of little history. This property, for those of you that have been in Bedford for a long time, was leased out by Altel. It was a call center. When they left, it had sat vacant for some time. U.S. Bank moved in during the housing crisis. They had a 10-year lease, sat vacant after that. Obviously, things came out of the housing crisis. It didn't warrant that to be filled. They did not renew. And it's been vacant. There's been some interested parties. Ultimately, it was purchased by a developer. The Ohio DYS does have a slide in here that really shows where it's at, because there was some confusion. People see 17500 Rockside Road and they're looking for where's there's open space. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, it is over Rockside Road Bridge. As you get into Maple Heights, you need to enter down Pennsylvania Avenue and you access the property that way. So that is where this site is at. The state, actually the developer who owns the property contacted the city. It was, I believe, the very end of March. We actually had our meeting where we met one-on-one was actually on April 4th. It was a Monday, April 4th, and we met. Obviously, we had some questions right out of the gate. They've been up front and answered a lot of our questions. We've done some additional research that we'll talk about afterwards, but as the mayor said, our primary goal was with everything. We want to get all the facts, all the information, and then make sure we share that. And what better way, I think, than for everyone here and viewing online to hear it directly from the source. So I will say I am horrendous with names. I do know Amy as the director. I would like to introduce Amy, if you could come up and go through the presentation and obviously introduce your team. And I apologize, I just don't want to miss anybody or mess up a name.
I'm going to have them
Amy.
introduce themselves. Thank you, Mike,
Okay,
so much.
here's,
I'll try not to
just-
mess with
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Well,
Thank you.
we'll introduce our team, and I'm going to probably have my back to somebody, so I apologize for that. Good afternoon, good evening. I am Amy Ast. I am the Director of the High Department of Youth Services. I spent 21 years, long before I had this gray hair, with the Department of Youth Services, and I left in 2018 to join the private sector, and I just recently came back to the department. I was asked by Governor DeWine to serve this agency as a director, and I couldn't be happier to do that. So I have been back just over 120 days now, and we've been talking about the Cuyahoga Hills Replacement Facility for about a decade. Long before I left DYS, I come back and it's still being talked about, and now we finally potentially have a plan. We're just looking for a place to put it, and we certainly want to contribute to this county. And we hope that we can convince the good people of Bedford to have us as partners and as good neighbors. So I'm going to turn it over to some of the team. So Janelle, so are you?
Good evening. My name is Janine Trim, and I'm one of the assistant directors for the Ohio Department of Youth Services. I've been with the agency now for approximately 10 years. I started my career on the adult side. I was the warden at the Marysville Correctional Facility for 4 years. Won't bore you with all those details, but I really just am a public servant at heart. I love what I do. I love the opportunity to influence underserved populations that are incarcerated, give them the tools that they need to get back in society if they do the work that we expect them to do, and that they can reintegrate and come back to communities and be tax-paying citizens. And that's what I do, and that's what I'm invested in. So thank you for having us share some of our vision with you this evening.
Hi, I'm Lou George. I'm the other assistant director. I handle indirect services for the department. I've been in state service for about 27 years, and I was at actually youth services back from 95 to about 2002 in management there. And then I left, and I've been in 3 agencies, and then the governor's office asked me in July to come back. And I'm reaching towards the end of my career. I've probably got 3 or 4 years to go before I have the opportunity to retire. And this really, youth services, for me, is the opportunity. You know, and I share things. I talk about the path that I'm on, and I talk about the legacy that I want to leave. And I will tell you that youth service is an opportunity to change lives. It's an opportunity to change youth lives, and that's really what we're in the business of. And so, with that, again, I'm excited to be here. I want to hopefully answer any questions you have, and just kind of lay it on the table, and we'll be good with regards to that. So.
Well, good evening. My name is Vince Spurlock. I'm our construction administrator for the agency. I've been with our agency almost 30 years now. I'm the old timer, I guess, of the group. I'm going to share something with you. We have a icebreaker somewhere along the way where you have to tell somebody something that they don't know, and I'm going to guarantee you nobody up here knows this. I'm invested in our agency. My dad was in this agency going back to the 1960s. So I'm here to tell you that standing up here, having a good job all these years, being invested, it comes from the heart. I'm not the one-off on this. Our agency's built of people that care about kids and care about making a difference. That's the truth. And so, good evening. We're going to answer questions, and hopefully we're able to ease your mind just a little bit. Okay.
Well, thank you, Vince, and thank you for sharing that. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about the agency as a whole, and then we're going to get more specific information about our Cuyahoga facility, which is just about 15 minutes away from here, and tell you about that specific facility, kind of where we are right now, and what we want to build. So, first of all, we are a state agency. I'm appointed by our governor. who's very committed to public safety. We actually, in our facilities, we have felony level offenders. These are kids that are adjudicated, and they can be adjudicated from the age of 10 up to the age of 21. Now, we typically in our facilities don't have 10 and 11-year-olds. We usually send those and contract those kids out. But we have had 12-year-olds, but our average age of kids is about 17.6. That's our average age. I also want to point out, there's a lot of news and a lot of communication that we're like the Cuyahoga County Juvenile Detention Facility. Well, that's not us. That's ran by Cuyahoga County. It's right downtown Cleveland. And that's a temporary stop for young men and young ladies when they get involved in the court. Some of them stay there, and then they go back into their community and get some programming and are on probation. Some of the kids stay there until they're adjudicated and come to us. And then some of the kids go on to the adult system from that facility. We don't control who comes to us. That's determined by the juvenile court judges. And that's also determined by county prosecutors working with those judges. So whoever they send us, whoever they adjudicate to the Department of Youth Services, that's who we incarcerate in our 3 facilities. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about those facilities. We serve, first and foremost, our youth. You know, Ms. Trim and Mr. Spurlock and Mr. George all talk about their commitment to our kids. That's what we do. We're not a short-term county detention facility. We are a facility who is invested in these kids, we're invested in our staff, and we're invested in the community. Because unlike adult offenders, these kids are going to come back. They're going to come back to our communities, they're going to go to school with our kids, they're going to go to church with our kids, they're going to play ball with our kids. We're going to invest in them. And I commit to you, that's what we do. Our families are also important. So we're not just working with kids when we have them in our facilities. We work with the families. We know some of the environments our kids come from. We know the supports our families need. So it's just as important to us to invest in our families as well as our kids, and certainly for the citizens of Ohio. Just roughly, our kids in the Department of Youth Services, we have 405 youth right now that are incarcerated in our 3 secure facilities. We have a facility here, as you know, in Cuyahoga County. We have a facility in Circleville, Ohio, and we have a facility in Maslin, Ohio. All 3 of those facilities serve male youth, and all 3 of those facilities serve kids from the age of 12 to 21. 17.8 years old is our average age. 72% of the kids that we serve are on the mental health caseload. That means we have a responsibility to make sure that they're provided mental health care, mental health treatment. Ms. Trim was talking a little bit ago about what they have to do in order to work their way back into the community. That's all part of their treatment plan. 44% of our kids are special education. That means we provide additional supports to them throughout the day when they're in school. Last year alone, we had 67 kids across our agency that either achieved their GED or were awarded their high school diploma, and we're really proud of that number. Also last year, fiscal year 21, we completed 35,611 community service hours. We do that a variety of ways with activities and projects that we do to serve the community. We serve some of the hospitals, some of the nursing homes in the community, providing resources and services to those individual organizations. Let me tell you a little bit about our staff. That's our greatest resource. We can't do this work without our staff. Right now, we have approximately 1,080 employees, and that's across our 3 facilities. These are highly skilled staff. We have mental health staff, we have teachers, we have nurses, we have social workers, we have case managers, and then we have our direct care staff, our youth specialists that are constantly doing the 24/7 supervision of these kids. We also have a maintenance department, we have a full HR department. Everything that we need to operate our 3 facilities, all of our staff get 120 hours of training when they first get hired. Then they have additional training, additional 40 hours throughout the year. Ms. Trim will talk a little bit about the training that they get here in just a minute. But most importantly, know that they have 4 weeks of training before they get started on their job, and then annual training. They're also certified in unarmed self-defense techniques. That helps them make sure that they stay safe and protect themselves. And then diverse in position, skill, and experience. So we're going to talk a little bit about our facility here in a minute, but we have a full education department. We have a full behavioral health department. We have cafeterias, school, everything that would be in the community we have inside our fence to serve our kids.
So research really tells us that good programming equals good security. And again, we want to have our facilities safe, but we have a responsibility and a duty to make sure that the kids are getting what they need. So again, one of our mantras down below is every youth will have an opportunity to achieve their full potential. We also talk about what we invest in is what we value. We really want to make a difference in these kids' lives. So, thanks, Gene. All right. So let me touch on education. We have an accredited school district for all 3 facilities. Each facility does have its own high school, accredited high school with regards to it. The educational programming that we have in there, it's vocational, it's career tech, it's also college partnership. So they get a college high school degree or a GED, and then they will also get post-secondary education too, to work towards credits, towards college credits. With regards to programming, again, it's important that we go ahead, and this is not just a place where we're housing youth. They're getting programming, meaningful programming, promising practices. A lot of this stuff is faith-based programs. There's going to be employment training. Again, we talked about the vocational piece, the educational piece. The employment training, we have computer programming, graphic arts, ServSafe programming, construction programming, auto mechanical, forklift certifications, just to name a few. So those are some of the things with regards to the programming that we have. Recreation, again, it's important that we go ahead and we have recreational services for our youth. Sports services, again, within the perimeter of the fence, we'll have this facility here. This land is nice because it really has an opportunity to really put some nice recreational things, again, within the fence itself, and it'll be a really opportune facility and opportune land for really changing these kids' lives. And then finally, community service. Director Amy went ahead and mentioned the community service piece and the number of hours we have. Some examples of this is we'll go ahead and we'll make blankets for nursing homes and for homeless populations. We've made bicycles. We've gone ahead and we've made bicycles for kids in need with regards to that. So those are, again, 2 examples of just some of the community service piece that we do, because again, it's important that when we're dealing with these kids, we're dealing with the whole kid, and we want to go ahead and make sure that these kids have an opportunity to give back to the community, and that's really, really important. Finally, the third component of this is the treatment aspect, and it's, again, evidence-based treatment. These youth need, they come with issues, they come with families and situations that you really don't know about, so we're trying to deal with that. There's a treatment component to that. Comprehensive behavioral services, mental health and medical services associated with that. In addition, since Director Ask came in, and it's been the last 90 days, we're also putting what's called, it's a foundational piece, and it's a trauma responsive environment that we're creating, and Assistant Director Trim will kind of elaborate more on that. But it really is kind of a holistic approach to dealing with these youth. Because eventually these kids are going to go back to their home communities. And it's important that we're making a difference in their lives. We want the opportunity to do that.
So I guess if I were sitting in your seats, I'd be asking this very question. What does good security practices look like? What does that really mean? So let me kind of break down a few things that I think will give an illustration. Won't be completely comprehensive, but it will give an illustration of what we believe are the important components of what a good security practice looks like. So comprehensive policies, what does that mean? We are a state agency governed by protocols and policies. which means that people aren't just making it up as they go, right? I mean, we refer to, on a daily basis, what does the policy say about this or that, to make sure that we stay within the guardrails of our practices, because that is what, from a legal standpoint, that is what is going to be defensible if the worst thing happens. We can say that we followed our policies. We review those policies quarterly at different times throughout, so there's always eyes on the policies throughout the course of a year. Robust security training. The director mentioned 120 hours of training. Well, it goes beyond that as well. We have not only our pre-service when we onboard people into our agency, but throughout the year, we have what we call in-service trainings. And those, again, reinforce our policies, our treatment regimen. It just is a plethora of training that is around security, whether that's from line movement, whether it's how we get kids safely to visit with family and friends during their stay. All of it falls under a security training protocol. Fortified security perimeter and alarm. We have shaker fences, which means anytime there's a touch to the fence, there's an alarm. We have a 24-hour control center that's manned, and people can see where the alarms were activated. So it's not as though somebody can touch, climb our anti-climb fences without us knowing about it, right? Somebody is going to immediately respond to that particular area. 363 internal and external monitor cameras. There are people watching cameras all the time. In fact, I can pull it up on my phone and watch it if I'm so inclined. So we make it a point, not only do we manage by walking around, but it is reinforced again by making certain that we have camera positioning where throughout the facility we have good lines of sight and can see through every corner of the facility at any time. Frequent daily youth population counts and security rounds. We have a certain number of counts that we do. Some of them are formal, some of them are informal, because the most important thing that we want to make sure everybody's alive and everybody is in the house. They should be in the house, right? Two things we have to make sure of every single day. Staff front entry and sally ports. So our back entrance and our front entrance are fortified by physical staff, again, as well as making sure we have cameras. So when you enter into one of our facilities, you don't just walk in. It's much like probably going through the airport, got to take off shoes, got to take things out of your pockets, got to go through a metal detector. If you don't pass the metal detector, then we're going to wand you. And then if we suspect something further, then we're probably going to pull you into a little room off to the side. It's all bad in that room. Staff are assigned OSHP, so we are, again, part of a state entity. So anytime that we have investigations, they're conducted by the State Highway Patrol. Anytime we need a response of any sort, that is the first call to law enforcement, who oversees and has jurisdiction over our facilities, not the local law enforcement. And then lastly, we do our own internal management audits. We do that informally, but then annually we'll do a full-blown internal management audit where we'll have a team of anywhere from 10 to 15 people who will come and look at over 300 standards, making sure that, one, we are at or above constitutional level, but also, again, that we are following the policies that we set forth and are governed by. Also, if you look at our external controls. So I spoke about audits, safety and security and performance-based audits as well. So we're constantly reviewing data to kind of tell us how we need to better manage our facilities, right? You don't know what resources you need to put towards what if you're not examining what the numbers say, right? So we have not only our internal auditors, but we have performance-based audits that really look at our daily operation and kind of point us in a direction where we might have to have more operational concentration, put together additional policies or protocols until we feel comfortable enough that we got it right. We'll keep looking at it. With all operations, you have policy drift. So We look at one thing, it comes into compliance, it's good, then you turn around, you got a little drift over here, you have to move, and that's what these performance-based audits do for us. Inspection, we also have oversight by the Correctional Institutional Inspection Committee, and that is a committee that is built from the legislation. We have some state reps that sit on that committee. It's a team of probably 4 people or so that come out. They can come unannounced at any time of the day and night and walk in. They have the clearance to come in and look at whatever they want to look at inside of our facilities, and we're okay with that. Accreditations and certifications. We are accredited by the American Correctional Association. Again, that has over approximately 400 or so standards that they come and look at. They have, so many of those are mandatory standards, which means that we cannot not pass those mandatory standards because all of those are related to quality of life issues, okay? And then we also are certified, all of our facilities with PREA, Prison Rape Elimination Act was signed into law in 2003 by President Bush. And basically what that legislation says is that we have a process in which we are going to keep kids safe from being sexually assaulted, abused while they are under our care. So a few data points that we just wanted to share. When we previously met, of course, a concern is, so how many escapes do you have in a facility? Important question. So I can stand here before you today, within 15 years, we've had 1. Another question came up, well, how many times will you might want to call EMS or have emergency come to us? We do probably 90% of our own transports. Our staff will transport if there's a need for a young person to go to a hospital. And so in 5 of the last 5 years, and then in terms of activation of the fire department, at Cuyahoga has been 1 in the past 15 years that we've had to call for assistance there. Of course, we have annual fire marshal inspections to make sure that we are in compliance, and if we're not, if we're found in violation, we have 30 days to bring those issues into compliance, and we do pretty well with that. Our staff take it very seriously and remediate those deficiencies pretty quickly. Monthly fire protection equipment inspections. We have a position in our facilities, our health and safety officer, who takes care of all of our inspections, and that is their job to go around and do run monthly fire drills, make sure our weekly and monthly safety and sanitation inspections are completed. We have a full complement of security staff who do daily rounds in the facility. As I said before, we manage by walking around. We don't sit in offices. We are in the people business, so we engage with people every single day, all day long. And then after action reviews, anytime there is a situation in our facilities that doesn't go according to plan, and there are times that happens, we get at a round table and we do after action reviews. We look at video. We do investigations. If we have to, as long as we have administrative, we have our own chief inspector's office who does our administrative investigations, but if we think that, if it warrants to go to the next level, then if it's criminal in nature, then we'll get the state highway patrol involved to do a criminal investigation if it warrants that.
So current state of business, we're currently located in Highland Hills. I don't know if you folks have looked at that. It's roughly aerial distance, about 7.5 miles from the proposed site. The reason why we're looking to move out of that facility, honestly, it's at end of life. The structure is 55 years old at this point. Think back 55 years ago, I'm 55 right now. We didn't have computers, we didn't have internet, we didn't have the robust cameras that we have in place today. The building was built without those things in mind. We've currently reached our capacity to add new security measures to the facility. The facility itself is somewhat landlocked where we're currently at. To build, if we were going to build new buildings on the site, that would be the first question as a taxpayer I would ask. to do that is extremely disruptive to our kids, basically. If I'm tearing down a building, I've got to build a building first. The green space that we currently have, these wonderful football fields and soccer fields and baseball or softball fields that we have, I'd have to build on top of those. So then we'd have all the construction traffic running in and out all day long while we're trying to hold programs and while kids are trying to get social services, those kinds of things. When they're sharing their soul, you're going to hear this truck run by, you're going to hear jackhammering going on. So that's the largest reason why we don't want to stay where we're currently at and do construction. But again, it comes down to us being landlocked. Open dormitory. The building that was built in 1967 was built with an open dorm. I don't know how, I know there's a couple veterans in here. And so from that end of it, open dorms work wonderful for the military. They don't work so well, honestly, for our kids. So if the time comes when we have to put a kid behind a locked door, we need to be able to put a kid behind a locked door and keep him there until time to where he's okay to come back out. It's also the same thing for a kid that wants to go behind a locked door and say, hey, I just need a timeout. I need some peace. Think about yourselves. There's a time when, believe me, old Vince there, when he's not out there plucking weeds and whatnot out in his yard, I need time either on the mower, which we give him time on the mower sometimes too, or I just need time to retreat back. And the same thing for our kids. Limited outdoor space, I kind of hit on that. Again, there's really no additional space at this point. Our future proposal, what we would build, or what we're going to build, whether we build in Bedford or elsewhere, honestly, it'll be a secure facility. The fence that we will install on that facility will be 13 foot high. It's called a Cobra fence, which means that basically it has an arc back in. It's very difficult to climb. Can you climb it? We'll put anti-climb measures on the top of it. Very difficult to get your fingers through. You can't get your fingers through is the truth of it. Can the fence be defeated? Absolutely. Anything can be defeated if given enough time and space. But with good programming and good security practices, that'll be minimized. Individual cottages. We've got another slide coming up here. But the cottages themselves, that seems like an old-fashioned term, right? Cottages. They will be, because inside of those cottages, you'll have house leaders, you'll have what we call unit managers. There's a whole structure of folks set up that basically ensure that the kids get from point A to point B throughout the entire day. It's called structured programming. And from the time the kids get up in the morning till the time they go to bed at night, it's on a schedule. And you've got folks that are making sure that the kids move on time to a specific place, a specific spot in that day and on that schedule. The proposed buildings that we would have, we're looking at roughly 120 beds is what we're going to look at. Well, this team and our agency has found that for structured purposes, our population works better. The less number of kids that we have, the more staff that we're able to give those kids. So what we've decided to do as an agency is we're going with 12-bed facilities. In the old days, going back, the older facilities were built for 24 beds. The reality of that is we've seen times when we were triple bunked in those beds. So, and that's terrible for kids. It's very difficult. The kids just don't get the time with the staff. And so what we're really investing in is that the kids will get time with their staff. The units that are going to be constructed, the unit manager will be on the living unit with the kid on the cottage. The social worker will be right there with the kids on the cottage. Their unit staff will be with them throughout the day. They'll have other staff that will escort the kids from point A to point Z as the day goes on. The green space, the wonderful thing about the proposed site here in Bedford, it's a wonderful campus. And I'll point out some of the other things when we go to the next slide, but the outdoor space there, kids thrive in campus. I worked at another facility somewhere along my career. I won't bore you with the details, but we had mature trees. Kids could take a walk out underneath the tree, sit under the tree. We would have large group sessions out there with the social worker and the kids sitting there talking about it either as a large group, and I can tell you when there's kids came to me and said, Mr. Spurlock, I need to talk. We go for a walk and we talk. Large open spaces, you can have those types of conversations. Going back to the as-is, currently today we're inside of one building and it's up and down hallways, and it's hard to share your innermost secrets as you're walking up and down long hallways and people are all over the place. This gives us space to be able to walk and to talk. Some of the programs, I won't get into this because I know that they will and I don't want to prolong this, but our kids are out there working. When I said that they're out there mowing grass, they'll be out mowing grass on this secure campus inside this fence. They'll be mowing grass. They'll be pulling weeds. They'll be planting flowers. So they're going to be very active, and this is a great program. So for those of you who don't know the location, this is 17500 Rockside Road. One of the other upsides of this property from your perspective, and ours, honestly, was selected for this purpose. We're somewhat landlocked. If you look to the north over there by the 17500 there where it says Rockside Road, that's the railroad track that cuts through there. That'll be one of our neighbors, proposed neighbors. To the far left, you've got the warehouses that are basically there. Also, what's not seen on this relief, where that green line comes up to the top there, there's actually roughly a 15 to 20 foot berm there as well that kind of blocks the vision of the facility. If you're looking from the outside, you're going to see a large berm, green space, wonderful trees, and then the facility contained within. To the south, or at the bottom of the picture, that's all woods back through there, and I think it's close to 300 yards as best as I can see it across there, and that's a densely wooded area through there. Again, from Pennsylvania Avenue, I believe it is, that runs along that way. You're really not going to see what we're doing back there, truthfully. And again, the long panhandle there that breaks off down to the what I'll call basically the northeast corner down there. That's a panhandle that, quite honestly, it's a steep drop. It's roughly a 50-foot drop into that ravine right off the railroad track. We won't be able to utilize that space as the truth of it. The other upside of this property, and if I have the pointer doesn't work, or maybe I don't know how to operate the pointer, but the wooded line here, where you see the development inside that right dead in the middle is where the existing building is. To the right of that drops off 50 feet. That's a ravine. And so, again, for those either trying to sneak contraband in or to get up close to it, to throw stuff over the fence, very difficult to do that. And I promise you, I was a former military guy. It's got spurs, it's got, the draws and all of that up in there if you're doing land navigation. It's not an easy travel to get up and down that hill there, that 50 foot, and there's a creek bed down at the bottom of it. The good news about that is, again, you see green space between the proposed site and the housing development that's close by there. And again, I think you're talking close to roughly, 2 football fields across there, give or take. To build the facility on this proposed site, we're not going to tear those trees out. We're going to leave predominantly all those trees in place. So this will block the community off in large part. And again, you've got the railroad track there again. Wide open spaces, kids thrive in wide open spaces. This is a rough draft. This is a draft. It's got the existing building on the bottom there in the center. It's got the existing parking lot. But these are the types of buildings and a potential view of what we would build there, honestly. Existing campus. The types of buildings we'll have obviously maintenance. We'll have a storeroom where we receive in all the supplies, the clothes, the blankets, you name it, supply-wise, will be received in there. Food service operation, fully functional, self-contained. All food subsistence will come in through that storeroom and over food service, housed and staffed by our own DYS food service staff. Again, Mr. George talked about the career and VOTEC building and the types of activities going there. We'll have auto tech in there. We'll have, we have currently, and what we will have at this site. One of the other things that we don't have at the other side, I'm going to back up. We don't have a career tech at the existing site, and there's no space to do that. So this is one of the things that we'll definitely have at the new site. We'll have a career tech building. We'll have CBI in there. And I know that's an acronym that probably you don't understand, and I probably don't know exactly the career-based industries. And so, see, I did know, I pulled that one out. Auto Tech, we'll have in-loader training. Our kids will get certified to run an in-loader. We'll have horticulture. They'll learn how to do landscaping. They'll learn how to grow flowers. They'll learn how to landscape land, rocks, break different rocks and build walls, that kind of thing. Recreational programs, the gyms that we'll have that we install, state-of-the-art, just like in your high schools. Everything that we do in our school is just like you guys do in your high school. We'll have increased security measures, but it'll be very similar and the same as yours. Recreational programs, one of the slides that we had, I put together a rough draft of this. Our staff are so engaged. One of my funnest slides I've seen in my 30 years is our youth specialist on a slip and slide with a bunch of kids. Kids out there with a hose, water this bad boy down, right? And our youth specialist taking a big run and running and sliding across this thing. And it's just, like I said, the engagement that our staff have with the kids, it makes the difference. A lot of our kids that don't have that, a lot of our kids come from homes who don't have parents that are there for them. Essentially, that's what our staff becomes to them, the pseudo-parents. We talked about the 12-bed facilities. In this case, what we're going to build will be 5 of those buildings. There's 12 beds in each side of it. If you're doing the math with me there, it's 24 total per building, 12 on each side, to give us 120 beds total. Large open spaces, those, you see that little loop inside the housing buildings. The housing buildings or cottages are where the kids will live. In the middle of that green space there, in that loop around the sidewalk, we'll have basketball, pickleball courts, basketball courts. There'll be picnic tables out there. There'll be trees out in the middle of all that. They'll have shelter houses. We'll have picnics. We'll have cookouts. We'll have activities. We'll have outsiders coming in. We'll have job fairs where the public will be invited in to share and potentially recruit our kids. We've had the military come in and they recruit our kids as well. Fun Day, one of the other highlights as I look back over the past 30 years, is the fun days that we have, and career days. Staff from our central office, I think there's roughly 150 people that work at our central office now. They're out in the field. We bought t-shirts. We're out there having fun with the kids and supporting our staff. I could talk for hours. I'll probably stop there. I have one more slide. Oh, no, I thought I had another. Who's up?
Thanks, Vince. So I think Assistant Director George spoke about our trauma-responsive environment. All research says with the types of kids that we get that has had probably more than one complex trauma exposure in their lives. Now, we all probably have some level of trauma exposure, but once you start getting into 3, 4, 5 different instances where a young person that comes into our facility has had that many trauma exposures, research tells us that the environment does matter, right? So when we're talking about what does that environment or what should it look like, it's important to have natural light. It's important to have sound barriers so that when people are talking that it's not echoing. Because a lot of sensory, kids are hard to self-regulate. And so noise, light, it all matters. And here is just some examples of some congregate facilities with trying to make it more of a normalized environment and not a prison. 100% of our youth are coming back home to a community of sorts. So we got a couple of choices. We can build a correctional environment that looks like a prison, again, that I worked in for many years, for 16 years on that adult side with the steel bars and the cleaning and steel beds and locker boxes and all those sort of things, very self-directed. If we do that, what type of individual do you think is going to come back out into the community in 18 months? Probably not one that we would want to be neighbors with or have in our neighborhoods, is what I'm thinking. So the more we can normalize the environment and we can address the issues that they have, and I mentioned before, full complement of mental health staff, full complement of medical staff, social workers that are working with youth on a daily basis to deal and help them understand how to work through their trauma issues. So the environment has to match the programming. It can't be incongruent. It has to be like and similar. So we are going to talk about, we want you to act like a normal human being. We want you to respond in a pro-social way. It's probably in our best interest that we give them a pro-social environment to do that in, right? And so there are tons of research out there about concrete construction for juvenile justice and what works, what youth with this sort of profile, what they respond to. And so this is just an example of pictures with soundboards, natural lighting, carpet, colors, those sort of things that just help us advance the work that we're doing with the young people.
Is that me? Yep. I'm sorry. So reentry, engaging in our community. So let me talk a little bit about how our kids are going to help our community. We want to be partners. One of the things that we do at our facilities is that we have community advisory board meetings. And those advisory board meetings are community leaders that want to come in and help tell us what the needs of the community are. If you have a high school football game on Friday night out in Columbus, Ohio, you know the Buckeyes are a big deal. I'm not sure about high school football up here in this area. Maybe it's a big deal, I'm not sure. But just as an example, if you have a need that somebody needs to clean the bleachers, get up all the trash, clean up the football field after everybody's gone on Friday night, that's stuff our kids can do. If you have a park that needs cleaned and maintained, that's stuff our kids can do. If you have a festival or a community event, I got to go in downtown Bedford, have dinner a couple weeks ago, and I just thought it was a great little town. If you guys have events and you feel like, man, we don't have the money to pay somebody to do this, but we know we've got some neighbors that are our partners up the street, let us know that.
You know, the director of the Circleville Pumpkin Show every year, that gets cleaned up by our youth who are in our Circleville facility and has for years.
And I want to show you something. We don't just go through and say, okay, who wants to go out and help in the community, right? Because everybody raised their hand. We do have some specific security criteria. We have a behavior management system, we have a classification system. Kids have to show us and have demonstrated to us they're ready to be in the community. And even then, there is a panel of people that evaluate them. But on any given day, you have kids in our facilities that are approved to be in the community to do these types of activities. Also, volunteering. You know, our kids, we talked earlier about some of the things they give back to the community, some of the community service. And volunteering isn't just about our kids coming out and volunteering in the community. We have a plethora of volunteers from the community come inside and help our kids. In fact, we've got, I think, like 30 male mentors from Cuyahoga County that are coming into our facility. We just recently, in February, we trained about 120 volunteers that are coming in, that come in every week. And here's what I can tell you about the people that come in and help our kids, whether they're working a Bible study with our kids, or they're working some kind of recreation program, or they're playing chess, or they're in the gym with our kids. They are mentoring. When a kid sees a volunteer, whether it's in the community or a volunteer comes into our facilities, our kids know they're not getting paid to come in, and our kids feel at ease with them. They don't feel like they're judged by them, that they have a chance to just be themselves. And you'd be amazed how our young men respond to men that come into our facilities, to adult men that show them a good path, and also to our females that come in. Some of these kids need a good mom, somebody to just lead them the right way. And I'm not saying we want a bunch of mothers to come in. I'm just saying we all have knowledge and experience, right? When I know better, I should do better. And we've all been on that path, and these kids need that. So volunteering is a big part of what we do. And then restorative justice, we've talked about that. We have kids in our facility that are from Cuyahoga County, and we have kids in our facility that aren't. Whether this is their community or not, we want them to give back to the community. That's the restorative justice piece. A lot of them harm the community. That's why they're with us. So teaching them the right way and how to give back to the community and be involved in the community and support the community, that's part of our job, to teach them that and to give them opportunities to serve. Building a partnership with you, I talked about the community advisory board, so our law enforcement partners, our business partners, our mayor, whoever wants to serve on our community advisory board, we want to invite you to do that. We have very active community advisory boards at our other facilities, and that would be an opportunity for you to help us just be a better part of the neighborhood. Local support agency meetings, what that means is that we have opportunities to work with the local law enforcement, the fire department, to come into our facilities, be familiar with our facilities. We don't want to call upon the services of them, but in a tragic incident, if it happened, we would want them to be familiar with our facilities. So we'll have local support agency meetings that we'll invite them to. If by chance there was a fire at a facility, I don't want them to go on the grounds for the first time when there's a fire to know, okay, what building do I go to, or where is building 4, or where is building 6? We want them to be familiar. We have annual tabletop exercises. We do that locally with our community partners. We also do that from a statewide standpoint. So we'll have our leaders in central office go to the facilities and do tabletops, and that could be on a utility failure. That could be on a natural disaster. We had a pandemic plan, although it was tremendously outdated. We found out once COVID-19 hit. But I don't think we were unique. I think a lot of people were prepared for that. But these tabletop exercises help us in the event of an emergency. We also have employees that work in central office that are part of the state emergency management system. So they always respond to EMA when there is an issue statewide, and then they have communication to all 3 of our facilities in the event of an emergency. And that could be weather emergency or anything. So we always have state resources available to us that assist us in those circumstances. Here's the last slide, and probably the one that's most important. We want to partner with you. We really want to partner with you. We want the city of Bedford to know that we're committed to making sure that your community is safe. Ms. Trim went over kind of our data from our facility that's been here since 1965. We're pretty good at what we do, and we feel good about that. But we also understand that there's a lot of people here tonight, probably because you got a lot of questions. But know this, I am committed to what we are charged to do. We have a governor that challenged me to not just run this agency, but to improve it. And in order to improve it, I have to make sure that the kids are ready to come back when they come back into our communities. I can't control who comes in the front door, but we can control who goes out the door. And just like Ms. Trim and Mr. George said, we all want kids that are transformed. That's the kind of kid I want next door to my house. So now, I'm sweating. It's hot up here. I feel like these lights. Anyway, I'm sure you guys have questions, and we want to certainly give you an opportunity to. Before we answer any questions, I do want to say there's a contact information up here, communications@bys.ohio.gov. Please feel free to email any questions if you don't feel comfortable asking it tonight or you want more information about something. Just email that email address and it'll go to our communications director and I'll make sure that you get your answer. But we're here to answer any questions tonight if you have them, so.
Yes, do you mind if I just jump in real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Real quick, and I appreciate the presentation, very informative. I'm going to shut this off because this, I think, generates a ton of heat too. And obviously, many of the questions I think that may come up. We had, as I've said, we had a lot of probably the same questions. I think first and foremost, one of the things that came up was, from our standpoint, in no way, shape, or form can we have our safety forces stressed, right? That was our number one concern. We have, I'll say it, we say it often. We have the best fire department and police department around. And they need to be laser focused on our residents and our businesses that are in town now. So any operation that would cause additional stress, calls for service, response, was absolutely the very first thing that came up. And it was good to see the one stat, because I can tell you, not that we didn't believe, but we wanted to do a little bit of due diligence, and we have. And you know, we'll continue to do that. We've done a number of record requests through dispatch centers that are tasked with sending those calls for service out. Our chief has communicated directly with 2 out of the 3 chiefs of police at 2 of the other facilities, one in Highland Hills and one in Massillon. And actually, I don't want to put him on the spot, but I will. If you wanted to just share some of what we found out so far. And as we go and continue to gather information and obviously ask questions, we'll share that as well.
Thanks, Mike. I am Chief Stemple, for those of you that don't know me. I want to welcome everybody here. It's a good turnout, and it's an important issue, so I'm glad to see everyone here. I'll be brief because I know there's a lot of information thrown at you. I just want to go over a couple things that was already gone over, but I want to reiterate. Obviously, my first concern when I first heard this proposal was, like everybody else, safety concerns. So I am the chief of police, and my main concern is the safety of all the residents, business owners, and visitors to this city. It's ultimately my responsibility. So I have the biggest concern out of everyone. I wanted to keep an open mind through this whole thing. And so far, with the information that's been presented and the information that I gathered myself, I have no concerns for the strain that it's going to put on our safety forces. Because I'll tell you, I pulled the records, public records, anyone can pull them from the city of Highland Hills, or village of Highland Hills. I pulled it for the last 3 years, because I wanted to go pre-COVID, during COVID, and after. And the amount of responses for police and fire both, very, very minimal. In fact, the facility, the Department of Youth Services, actually the only time they called the police were for vehicle lockouts, when people lock their keys in their cars, either employees or visitors. And the Village of Highland Hills Police Department would do regular business checks. Those are the majority of the calls, were lockouts and business checks. The only time they called us or called down were a couple of suspicious vehicles they saw near the property, which their security saw it and called right away, and it turned out to be nothing. And again, the fire department was there a minimal handful of times. For 3 years, I pulled the record, so I was happy to hear that. So, aside from the public records, I called the chief of police in the Village of Highland Hills and the city of Massillon. I heard back from both of those. I didn't hear back from the Circleville chief yet. But the 2 chiefs I talked to, I wanted to talk to them off the record, and aside from what I saw on paper, and ask them point blank, you know, are you happy they're leaving your village? How have they been? I asked them all the hard questions. And both chiefs told me the same thing, that they didn't even know they were there, basically. They handle everything in-house. The state troopers are assigned to those facilities. They handle all investigations. They don't call local police for anything, really. So those are all good things that I was happy to hear. And again, I'm not making an opinion one way or the other, because it's still early on, and I'm just still gathering information like all of you are. But at this point, I have no concerns so far, any safety concerns, which again is my ultimate responsibility. So.
Thanks, Chief. I wanted to share that, because that was obviously, I'm sure, was a lot of individuals here, residents, business owners, as well as ours. It was the first thing that came up, that, you know, we can't have that strength. And obviously, it was reassuring to hear that. So we'll continue to gather data and whatnot, and the factual information. I will say the Department of DYS has been very open and forthcoming with all of our questions. And we pepper them with hard questions, that's for sure. And, you know, if others come up, we're going to continue to do that. I think just to give everyone a quick timeline, should they choose to pursue, it's probably another They would have to most likely go in front of planning commission and or council. That's kind of the process, so it could be anywhere from 30 to 45 days. I don't wanna, give an exact, because obviously nothing's been submitted technically. They may walk out tomorrow and find another spot and say, sorry, Bedford. But should that get submitted, it would probably be a 30 to 45 day window. And I don't know, I don't want to put you on the spot, if it was okay, the timeline that you shared, roughly, if a site was selected. Is that okay to share? I have, is that okay? So some of the information that, they talk about construction, what does that entail? Construction, the project is roughly a $150 million project. It would not open until 2026 is what they shared with us. Obviously, it has to go through an approval process, a planning process, and then there's an additional roughly 2 to 2.5 years of construction. There wouldn't be a move-in until 2026, so that is the timeline. I didn't want to put you on
No,
the
that's
spot,
okay.
but
Marcy was probably the better person to answer that question, but, yeah, it's a little bit of a process, and there's something about Cleveland winters I hear, so I don't know how construction works during the winter months, but, we certainly, we wanna do what's right by these kids, and we know what evidence-based tells us, evidence-based practices, what facilities should look like. The pictures we showed you of just what a trauma-responsive environment looks like, those were markups, but that's very much what our Circleville new housing units look like. We loved working with a design team, and we will do that for this facility on all facets of it. We want it to blend into the community, we want it to look good. If we get it done before 2026, I'll be really happy, but I don't know how the winters are gonna be, so. And then, of course, we've got a lot of things going on with construction materials, as you guys probably know, because of the pandemic and getting resources and things. But that's why getting on top of this and moving as quickly as possible is what the goal for us is.
thank you. We're kind of gonna just go back and forth, one side like we do at our ward meetings for those that are present. We'll take a question from back and forth. And then obviously, if you have multiple, we want to give everybody an opportunity. So please, one question. And just because we are live streaming this, for those that might not have been able to attend tonight, I'm just going to repeat it because it won't pick it up. So I'll repeat it so it gets brought up. So first, right down in the middle, we'll take your question.
So on the construction, are these single-story units, double-story units?
That's a great question, thank you. They're going to be single, we find, and again, they're going to be single-story structured buildings. And from the community's perspective, you're going to see rooftops. You're not going to see large, two double-decker apartment buildings or something above your tree line.
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I'm very impressed with your presentation. This is nothing like what I expected it to be very honest. But I do have one question. On your layout there on the map, you showed this building, that building. Is there a zoning law of any kind of how close you can be to a school? Because Glendale School is right through those woods.
I don't believe so. I don't want to stand up and say no, but I will tell you, Bedford Middle School is right next to a jail right now. In Bedford Heights, so I don't think this would be within that. I don't believe there's any legislation or zoning. I know Bedford zoning, there's nothing in Bedford zoning addressing that distance. One second, I'll come back to this side. Go ahead, sir.
What percentage of the residents who come into your system are convicted of crimes after they leave?
That's a really good question.
That was my question. So the question was, repeat offenders, after someone would leave, are they convicted again? What is that percentage?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Our recidivism rate, they call that recidivism, is 14%, right around 14% in the first year. Which is really good nationally in comparison to juvenile facilities.
Go ahead, sir.
What other locations are you considering?
Here in Cuyahoga County, right now this is it. There's not a lot of property in Cuyahoga County. Go ahead, Mike.
And I just, to add to that, one of the questions we had inquired about that as well when we met. The state had indicated that they put together, and correct me if I'm wrong, they had a bullet point of priorities. I think it was roughly 50. And for, obviously they have 300 and some employees at their current site. They didn't want to go too far out. They want to be conscious of their employees. It's a short distance, Bedford to Highland Hills. Our site, and why they had approached us first, is it met roughly 49 out of those 50 bullet points. Seclusion, natural barriers, trees, things like that. And obviously there were many more. No one over here? Oh. Sir, in the back?
Yeah, so I wanted to start by saying this. I was a little bit offended at the start of the meeting by it being said that I don't have, we're giving this as a courtesy, because that kind of, just like, you're willing to shove this down our throats. Because as a courtesy, we do appreciate them doing this, but, we could do a referendum if we wanted to. But my question is this, is regarding, because I feel it's going to be kind of uneventful for the state troopers, like not a lot going on and so forth, does that mean that then they'll be allowed to turn their attentions to travelers up and down Rockside Road doing a little bit of extra?
No, that's it.
And sir, I can answer some of that. The state troopers that, maybe you guys can answer also, the state troopers that are assigned to that facility have those specific duties. They're not patrolling and stopping in there, going out patrolling, writing tickets and stopping in there. So, obviously the state troopers throughout Cuyahoga County have jurisdiction over any state routes or adjoining streets. So you see them everywhere on occasion, depending on where they're assigned. The nearest state trooper post, I believe, is in Brook Park. So you see them more on the west side than you do over here, because there used to be one in Garfield Heights. I don't think they're fully operational there anymore. But again, back to your question, if they're assigned to your facility, I imagine that they would be doing just those duties and not just running traffic out here. Just from my experience, seeing the troopers out here and working with them.
Thank you. Go ahead, ma'am.
I always get to ask the hard questions. Mike answered my first one, which was why Bedford. He said we hit 49 out of 50 of the points because Bedford's awesome. Now, the hard question for you is, I'd like two of you to give us a negative or a drawback for your facility coming to Bedford.
I don't know that it's Bedford specifically, but our hiring really good quality staff who understand our mission and vision is difficult. And I'm sure it would be as difficult in Bedford if somewhere else, right? I mean, we are constantly, we're not just hiring people to move boxes or something, we're not Amazon. We are in the people business, and so I think one of our challenges in this community, would be in this community as well as others, would be really making sure that we get the right people to do this work.
And let me build on that, I guess. Again, as an employer coming into your city, I don't want to take away from existing businesses, but if there's opportunities, that may draw in. If there's, again, with regards to employees here that have a passion for changing kids' lives and really want to do this type of service, then we may be pulling them from other places. So again, if that's a drawback, that'd be the only thing I can say. I mean, I thought about the opportunity. So I wanted to sit in your seat, okay? And I want to say, what am I gonna, why would I want youth services here? Why would I want the facility? And we talked a lot about it. We talked about it at the first meeting. Am I gonna put a strain on your city for the services. I'll be honest with you, am I gonna be, is it gonna hurt my property value? Is it gonna harm me in some way, right? I mean, that's really what you're wanting to know, I think, if I was sitting in your chair. And I honestly, we've gone through this. I really think that you're not gonna see, you're not really gonna see the facility unless you wanna come to the facility as a volunteer. We'd love to have you. I really think that this, we're gonna build a facility. You saw it's 55 years old. We need to build a facility. We need to make a difference in kids' lives. We listen to the media, we listen to the news, we listen to what's going on out there. And, I went back to, I've been doing this, like I said, 27 years. And just as Vince said, I have a real passion for it. Just as Vince's dad was, had been in DYS, at DYS, my dad also, and my dad instilled in me that he was superintendent of schools and director of education for the youth services for 25 years. And he really felt that the way to stop a kid from committing additional crimes is to give him an opportunity. And he felt education was a key. That's why education is so important to us. And he instilled that in me. And again, we're going to build it somewhere. I would love to have you as part of this community, as part of a partnership with regards to making changes in these kids' lives. That's your choice, okay? It was said that it's going to come down to it. So we're not barging in. We're just not going to say, we're putting it in here, we don't care what you say.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
No,
Wanting to
but
know,
it's,
because when you do a presentation, you have
Sure.
all of the million-dollar presentations, that everything is great, everything is good. That's why I was just asking what was a drawback to
yeah.
them coming in. But I do love your answer that you don't hire warm bodies.
No, we hire people with passion, and we'll train people with regards to it. We want qualified individuals. So again, that's going to be. I'm sorry.
No. I just wanted to add one thing, and not that I'm checking up, but I was checking up. I know you had mentioned something about property values. I did do some research, and anybody can go on here. I went on Cuyahoga County. I looked at where you're at now. Obviously, you have Tri-C that I believe abuts you on east side or whatnot. But I did notice, if you look online, there is a residential street that runs along your property. Their backyards are the open, it's all wide open.
Green room?
No, there's a side street off Green Road. And
Existing facility?
yes, at your existing facility. And I did go through and I started checking all the property values because I wanted to see what those were. Are those property values 45,000 or are they more? And I didn't check all of them because there's a lot, but I was going through the list and they were 95, 135, there was a house at 169, and that's all on Cuyahoga County's website. So, because property values was something that I thought about. It was a question that was posed to me. So I did. If anybody, again, I only checked here and there. If you want to go through and look at that, I recommend going to Cuyahoga County's website. You can do a property search of their existing site, and you can check what those values are. And there were some high value residential homes. I didn't get into the business.
I saw that as well.
I just wanted to share that because it was a question that was posed to me, and we did a little homework internally.
So we would love you to partner with us. We would love you to really make a change in these kids' lives. And I truly think that's important, and it means a lot to the director, the assistant director, myself, and the staff. And again, I think that I'll be honest with you, I love your community. I'm not going to bring my wife up. There's too many car dealerships here. We would drive down the road, and I would leave with a car, and that would hurt me. It would really hurt me. So, but I'd love you to partner with us.
We'll go to this side of the room. Is there a question on this side?
The lady in blue had everything.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wally will have to come back. Ma'am? Yes.
What is the capacity going to be, and is it for male and female?
I believe, and I don't want to speak for them, but their current site, they have 93, based on what we identified, and they're looking to have a max of 120, and it was male.
Just males?
Yes. Ma'am? Oh,
Can you share like next steps, like what happens next? Like what does that process look like? Is there
So
a vote? Is there, what those on the board, what's next?
I think right now, it's up to the Department of DYS in Ohio. They would, should they really choose to pursue that site, you know, the understanding is they do have a tentative agreement with the owner of the property, but there's contingencies on that. There's contingencies are zoning. There are aspects of it that it is zoned, but there's others that they would need a conditional use. So should they choose to pursue this, they'd have to submit an application to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission will make a recommendation vote, and ultimately it'll go to City Council. That's why roughly if they turned in an application tomorrow, based on when the meetings are, it could be anywhere from 30 to 45 days. If they turn in an application in 6 months, it's gonna be 7 to 8 months until a decision. But roughly, once, should they pursue it, it would go through that step from internally with the city. This second, sir.
I just wanted to add, hi, I'm Marcy Jeter. I am with the State of Ohio Department of Administrative Services. I'm the administrator of real estate. So we offer support services in the area of real estate planning for all of the state entities, colleges, and universities. So that's my role. So you can, if you want to blame someone, we found the site. But I just wanted to just emphasize just on the timeline. And if in fact, we certainly, we're not going to push anything down anybody's throat, but we have very much are interested in the site for all of the reasons that you've heard tonight. Yeah. And so what our intent would be, we do have contingencies in our purchase agreement with this property owner that we're hoping that we can check off the boxes. As was stated, part of that is this conditional use permit, the zoning variance that we need. But what we would like to do is we're hoping that we will get a positive response from you all tonight, and we could move forward in the near future and submit an application in hopes, frankly, that we would get something approved by June at the latest, so that we could close, frankly, on this property by mid to end July. Now, I know that the team talked about the timing of actually building the facility, but as far as, I'll say buttoning it up, tightening it up, taking control of it, owning it, we would actually like to do that by the end of July, if at all possible, in hopes that we can meet the timelines that you've already heard. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Mike, is there a property tax implication here? Will the state be paying taxes on
no, there's an actual, the state does not pay taxes on real estate. The effect of it right now, the value of the property is only $1 million right now. It's built originally at $7.5 million, so you can see the devaluation already of the property and its condition. Right now, it's about $60,000 a year, as I saw in the tax duplicate. Our share, that's 20.
So you're adding a lot of jobs. This is
Yeah, this
a lot of
substantially,
jobs to Bedford,
and
which is
There would be,
for our benefit.
however, there's
Yeah.
roughly 300.
in effect,
For each facility.
Greater than this facility.
Okay.
Kind of
yeah, when you look at the effect that that can have on the economy itself, is substantially better than what we're achieving right now. You saw the, $152 million invested in this facility. A lot of jobs, a lot of creation of construction, materials. It's going to add a lot to the community. Since I'm talking, I did have actually 2 items, but one, I'm going to ask, in regards to the facilities itself, something I would like to see if I was in the town, buffering, substantial buffering of trees so that I don't have to see the fences as much from the areas that are open more. And I don't mean right up to it, obviously. I don't want people climbing over the fence and doing anything like that. And then 2, if you would explain something that wasn't mentioned today, was the release process, so that people don't think it's like TV and shows and movies where you just walk out the gates. Can you explain the release process of these individuals?
All of our our youth are released to a person. We don't, unlike the adults, there's a bag and they put them at the bus stop and wish them well with $25. We don't do that with our young people. They are received by a person, whether that be a guardian, their parent, or if they are going on to another residential facility, someone is there to physically make sure that they are picked up.
60, there was one other thing that I'm just sharing information that comes to mind. We had asked the question, how many individuals are from Cuyahoga County at their current site? And they had shared with the city that roughly 60% are Cuyahoga County, roughly. And then the additional 40% are from an outside county, or counties. One sec, I'll be right back. I left Wally.
This kind of goes along with what Frank was just saying. The facility is very secluded. In fact, driving around, it was hardest heck to even find out where it was. It is very secluded now, it's wooded and everything. My question is, how very secluded will it be after these buildings are built? You mentioned that they're one-story buildings, but there was a lot of talk about the fence, and my question is, will there be a fence then around the periphery of the property, or will there be, as Frank mentioned, a buffer where the fence is, more like in the woods, because it'll no longer be secluded if the fence is on the absolute periphery of the property itself?
Correct. So basically what's going to happen there, see the picture that was up on the screen previously? Those large groups of trees that are there, those are going to remain there. We're going to be on the inside of those.
Then the fencing on the inside of
Correct.
the trees?
Yeah, so if I'm across the way in the neighborhood, you're not going to see the fence. You may see it through the trees, but the trees are going to be there. We have no plan to remove those trees. They're going to remain.
I'll come back.
Quick question, income tax, how much would that generate to the city?
The numbers I received from their department, I asked that question too. I mean, that is not the primary reason we're looking at this. The payroll will be about $14 million. It'll range anywhere from around $400,000 to $420,000 a year in taxes that we will receive for this property with those 297 employees that we have. So it is substantial to the city. It equals our road program for 1 year. So it is a substantial increase to our city.
That's an important point, I think, for the community to know, that positive generation of funds for the community.
Sir?
Yeah, so, here's the only other question that I have. So, like, in Cuyahoga County, they're proposing the construction of a new county jail. And so, in that proposal, they're proposing to build a jail that's a larger capacity, which a lot of folks, myself included, think that it's an uninformed decision that they're making because they haven't waited to get the data to see if the programs are working. So therefore, by making more bed space, if they build it, they will come. They're going to fill it. You know what I mean? That's just how it works. And so I have a concern, like with this that they're proposing, they said that there were 90-some incarcerated individuals that they currently hold, and that they're going to increase the bed space. Now, I will say that after having some conversations with Annette Chambers-Smith recently, because of some of the work that I'm involved in, because of having some conversations, I do take some comfort in the direction that I feel that they're trying to go with the Department of Corrections, but I still kind of go to that if you build it, they're going to fill it. And so with that being said, myself as a concerned, property owner here in the city of Bedford, is that I want to take comfort in knowing that the things that you're doing in there are actually rehabilitating, that are actually working. So is there going to be something in place where I can see and other residents can look and see that there's a level of transparency as to fights that occur? You know what I mean? Incidents like that, people that have gotten shipped out, the different incident, like, we wanna know what's going on in there, because one thing, I've been trained in de-escalation. So, I know the opposite of de-escalation is escalation. So when I get that de-escalation training, I'm also trained on how to escalate. So I want to know if you've got the right people in there, because you say you're gonna get them, but I wanna know that you got them, because the wrong person can help create the wrong person coming back into our community. And so I just wanna know if you're gonna have a level of transparency, and I just also just wanted to further express that I'm a little dismayed with the fact that you're gonna build more dead space.
Well, Janine, I don't know if you want to jump in, but let me start by saying, you know, since you've been trained in de-escalation, you can come and work for us too. We could sure use you. And I'm glad you're communicating with Director Annette Chambers-Smith. I mean, certainly she's got a whole different population that she serves, and on a much grander scale than DYS. Now, on average, Cuyahoga Hills, over probably through the pandemic, has probably served anywhere from 75 to 9,500 kids. But over the course of the years, that facility I've seen and been in it when it had 200, 250 kids. It's a dormitory style. That means on every living unit, we could put up to 25, 30 kids on a living unit. We don't have that now. And the reason that we don't have that facility filled is because it's not safe. To have those kids in a dormitory setting, we know what works best for kids is when they have their individual room, when they have their individual space, when they can say, you know what, I've been around the rest of these 20 boys all day long, I need a break. In fact, they might even need a break from our staff, or our staff might need a little bit of a break from them. Those individual rooms matter. Plus, it gives them an opportunity to make it their own room, right? If they're gonna be with us for a year and a half, close to 2 years, we want that to be their space. And we want them to have the pictures of their family, and we want them to earn things for their room that they would like, a rug for the room, bedspread for the room, whatever their privileges are, based on their behavior. So, for you, it probably sounds like, okay, we got 90 and we're gonna build 120. 120 is a great number for that facility, and it's much smaller than what it was designed to be. We would never put what it's designed to be. We would never put that in there right now. We couldn't. It wouldn't be safe for kids, it wouldn't be safe for our staff. So 120 is reasonable. At our other facilities, we are at 144 at our Circleville facility, and that's a full facility. And then our facility in Maslin is about 150 maybe, or 160? Yeah, and all those facilities, youth have their own individual rooms. And they're small units like we just talked about today. It's very different than what we have right now at Cuyahoga. And I want you to imagine, like, you know, when we talk about we want a campus style, and we, you know, Vince went over that diagram that had the units on one area, and we had a gym, and we had the school. The kids at our facility now here in Cuyahoga, they don't have that. It's all one building. They have very limited space outside. Outdoor activities, vitamin D, we all know we love the weekend, right? 82 degrees all weekend. You know, our kids have very limited time outside because there's not space. Everything is inside. They go from their living unit to the dining hall, to education, to recreate, it's all inside. And we want a campus style like our other two facilities. We know that works for kids. We know it's very helpful for staff as well to get outside, to breathe fresh air, to be engaged with the kids outside. And we just think overall it's going to be good for them, and certainly it'll be good for them as they return back to the community.
This side. A quick question, is the existing building and parking lot and everything going to be rehabbed and repaved and landscaped?
Sure, thanks for the question. The existing building, the truth is that we don't know if we're going to keep it yet. We haven't got that far in to really truly assess the facility and how we're going to lay that out. That's the truth. One of the questions that was asked, and I won't keep you long, the only downside that I saw to the property, it took me forever to think about it, and we looked at over 50 properties before narrowing it down. This isn't the only site that we looked at. We looked at over 50. But the key component to this, and the downside I'll get to it, is that it's only 20 acres. If I had, Vince's wish list, it would be larger. More green space, more space. The truth is that we're not going to be able to squeeze a whole lot more in there, because if we do, then we're gonna be in a situation where we're losing that critical green space that makes this property the plus, if that makes sense.
Excuse me, two questions. First of all these kids are felons, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, do you know like the percentage of violent felons, murderers, rapists?
So our two highest felony offenses are either crimes against people or crimes against property. Those are the primary ones. Now in Ohio, there's something called Reclaim, and what Reclaim does is it incentivizes county courts to really divert kids that are lower, moderate risk kids away from DYS. So the kids that come to us are kids that are not appropriate to be served in the community. These are kids that are serious offenders, they're felony level offenders. That's why we have them so long, right? We need some time to make sure that we have time to reform them and to help them be better when they return to the communities.
So where do these kids come from? How do you decide who goes there?
So the process is the county courts, we've got 88 counties in the state of Ohio, and they can commit kids to DYS. And we have two facilities that we call our intake facilities. That means if a county judge in Cuyahoga sends a kid to DYS, they're first going to go to our facility in Massillon. That's where our intake facility is. And they'll go through a series of assessments. They'll be there roughly about 30 days. They get a medical assessment, a mental health assessment, an education assessment, and that tells us, okay, where's the best place for this kid to be? If they're a Cuyahoga kid, and they could potentially live very well up in Cuyahoga Hills in a dormitory setting, then that's where we'll transfer them, and that's where they'll live, they'll be closer to home. But it might be a kid that wouldn't do good in a dorm setting, so they're gonna stay right there at Massillon, at that facility, even though they're from Cuyahoga Hills. So it just depends on the assessments. We make some determination on our bed space and where it's appropriate, and then we determine what facility they go to. So every facility has a range of kids from different parts of the state.
We'll come back, one second, just wanted to be, questions here? Okay, ma'am?
Who determines how long these individuals stay in the facility? The people that are assessing them, taking care of them? Is that how they'll determine how long they stay?
Well, it's a little bit of both. It's up to the judge. So he starts it based on the crime they committed, based on how much time is associated with that crime. Now, when a young person is with us, if they do what they're supposed to do, and they don't have any incidents that might get them additional time, then they pretty much go home as planned. But if they're here and they cause some problems, maybe they're not safe to themselves, or they're not safe to their peers or to our staff, then they go through a process of accountability. And we have a release authority board, much like the parole board in the adult system, and they are driven by statute, and they have the authority to continue a kid's stay. You know, just like Ms. Trim said when we first started this morning, we're not just gonna release people just to release people. We're gonna have confidence that our kids are ready to come back into the community. We also have parole officers, so not only do we operate our state facilities, but we also have state parole officers that operate throughout the state, and each kid, when they return home, are assigned a parole officer.
I would also add this, it's not there are no perfect systems, right? We work hard to invest in the youth, the families, so that they come back into the communities fully prepared. Is it always a success story? It's not. I mean, but we do the best we can with the tools and the resources that we have. I can tell you, with a 14% recidivism rate, it's pretty good. We'd love it to, 100% of our kids go home, they stay out and never get involved with the criminal justice system at all. But that's not the reality of it at all. So I don't want anybody here. Our facilities run very well. Are they perfect? They are not perfect.
Sir?
So this seems like it would be a very hard job to have to work in one of these places. What's your employee turnover rate like? I mean, do you have employees coming in and out all the time, new employees?
Well, here through the pandemic, it's been quite a challenge, I'll be honest with you, and not just our facility here, across all of our agency. in central office, in our other facilities, in our parole regions. It's been very difficult. We have a lot of competing vendors out in the community. There's a lot of behavioral health and mental health treatment that's needed in the community. So when we're working to get our behavioral health and social workers into our facilities, sometimes we're competing with local folks. For our direct care staff, it at times is also very challenging. It's the hardest job you'll ever love. It is, I mean, these are to be clear, these are the highest need kids in the state of Ohio. They have the highest needs. And we're there to serve them, and we're going to serve them. But our direct care staff, they're our greatest resource. And when we get them, we try to invest in them. And we have staff, just like Vince, have been 25, 30 years into the agency, and we have some staff that we get trained up, and they're on the job for a year, and they just decide it's not for them. And we're going to have that.
I will say, we did, I don't have an exact number, I don't want to mislead. During the height of the pandemic, we had quite a few people that just decided, I don't want to work in a congregate care setting right now. Legitimately, we had some staff who were infected, we had kids that were infected, and so in the interest of their families, they made decisions that they wanted to find other work, and that's what they did, which, caused us to have to really hunker down and do some recruiting and marketing to fill those positions.
Ma'am?
Yeah, just to reiterate some of the things that Director Ash and Assistant Director Trim is saying, in regards to the number of beds not necessarily increasing, and also in regards to the turnaround for staff. Because it's an open dorm setting, you have to think about what that does to staff. It's as if there's young men in the space just like this in bunk beds. So at any moment, it could be 10 bunk beds, or it could be 20 bunk beds. It could be 30 bunk beds. But when you go into the format that they're proposing, it's only one person in that room. So now, as a staff person, there's a feeling of more safety. As a youth, there's a feeling of more safety, and that number cannot grow from 120 to 200. It has to stay 120, which now allows for staff to want to return and feel safe, as well as youth to be able to go somewhere where they're being heightened, or when they themselves feel unsafe, whether to someone else or to themselves. So those are just some things to think about. And like they said as well, with 60% of those youth being here in Cuyahoga County, if we're the only space that is amazing enough for you to be at, because Bedford's amazing, then that means that 60% of those youth will now be moved away from their families, as well as those 300 employees will now be moved somewhere else as well. So all of those things.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And I know you're familiar with this, and we'll take you back to, we want to hire folks, but, and I want to check on that data, and Mike, we'll make sure you get the data right. I think Cuyahoga County by far is the county that commits the most kids to DYS. I think it's more around 35%, not 60%. It is the highest of all counties in state, but I'll get you that data so you can share it.
That'd be great. Ma'am?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about two things. One of them, can't remember, and the other. I really wanted to know, being a state agency, do they need the city's approval? I mean, can't they just come in and take the land?
Like Mike said, the zoning process and planning and.
Because, I mean, there's eminent domain, the state can take something.
Eminent domain's not that easy to do, but, no, and if it became a big struggle like that, they're gonna go somewhere else. Simple as.
I think their goal, as they had indicated to us, and I think it was mentioned again, their focus is to be in Cuyahoga County. Is that right? So their focus is to be in Cuyahoga County. Bedford's property met the checklists, and they came to us first, and obviously we wanted to have an open meeting and talk about all this, because all of your questions are questions that we've been asking. So, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, the thing that brought me out tonight is I've been absolutely haunted by the new facilities that they built over in Pennsylvania and the things they did to populate those beds. And I know there hasn't been much talk about the financial side of things. You know, I know over there, the judges had affiliations or partnerships with the contractors who built the new facility. But what accountability is there going to be on the financial side of it? Where's the funding for this coming from? Is it just state funds?
So one thing that I will mention, with any project, just from the city standpoint, and I'll turn that question over to the director as far as their funding. Any business that would come into Bedford, we're very competitive against a lot of other communities, right, in Cuyahoga County. And when there's a business that may be looking, if you're not going to offer an incentive, they're not gonna choose your location. So a lot of times with new construction, that means tax abatements. We've been very creative with a job credit, like where we give companies a portion of an income tax rebate to try to bring them here. So the reality is, if another company was coming and says, hey, we're interested in this site, it's gonna cost us something to get them here. In regards to this potential project or proposal, we're not offering anything. There's no income tax rebate, or, I mean, it's like how that works. There's things like that is a little different. What I'm saying is, it's a little different.
I think we can go home now.
I'm just comparing it, she knows it.
I will. The answer to your question is this state of Ohio capital dollars, capital improvement dollars. So there's no outside entities that will be governing it. We're governed by the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission with everything that we build, and they're going to oversee it. They'll oversee the contracting. They'll oversee the bidding on those contracts. And it'll be public forum. You'll be able to see all of that. It's very transparent. And so where does that money come from? Without giving you the whole lecture and the spiel, it's bond dollars. It's what's buying it. Okay. All right. Thank you.
One last question, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
It's just regarding the property, so I haven't gone and taken a look at the area, but I know, once again, I'll reference what they're doing with the county jail and why a lot of folks are against it. They're proposing to build that on some very toxic land. And, you know, if they don't build it there, then they're talking about maybe putting it wherever else, and nobody wants it in their backyard, so a lot of folks say, keep it where it's at and just fix the building, which I agree with. But what I'm asking you is, what about that land? Does that area is gonna be in need of any toxic remediation?
Thanks for the question. We've done some preliminary review on it. It's what's called a phase 1 environmental. And so far, everything that we know, if you want to go back 100 years, it was an old racetrack. And it's basically set vacant for up until, 1970, I think, 1993 actually. That's when the first building was built back there. Finest Foods built their office back there. Finest Foods left. And if you're familiar with Finest Foods, the warehouses that were up there, that used to be their warehouses. Finest Foods put their corporate headquarters behind it. So it's set vacant for a long period of time. Finest put the new building on it that's there now. And then I think Bank One, if I'm not mistaken, purchased it. And then US Bank. But to our knowledge and everything we've looked at, no. And we've had professionals look at it. There's no environmental issues that we're aware of.
Just for, I'll move around some more. We'll probably wrap up in about 10, 15 minutes, so I want to give everybody an opportunity that may not have asked a question. Is there, go up, ma'am.
So I got two. Is the 14% just that facility that's trying to come here, or is that across all three?
That's our agency.
That's just that
For the
agency?
whole, for a whole
The entire.
agency.
All
three.
All
Yes,
three, okay. And then also the 300 plus employees that are coming, are those existing employees, or are they intending to, I guess, increase the employees? Like, because it was talk that, it's gonna be bringing in a lot of jobs to the area, so I was just trying to see how that was gonna work.
We'll probably, certainly direct care staff, we'll have to look at those numbers. Will be a slight increase because there'll be more kids there. So certainly we'll have to raise and our staffing levels around direct care.
One question for construction. We as residents deal with the railroad. How do you feel you're going to be able to deal with the railroad?
That's a very good question. If you go on our website and pull up on Google Earth, our Circleville facility is right along the railroad track as well. Having grown up, I grew up on the railroad track, you kind of get used to it after a while, truthfully. It's like the rain pounding outside. How do you get used to it? It's there, just get used to it, truthfully.
Any other questions? What?
Question, you mentioned that
One second, just so she gets.
You mentioned that the youth do volunteer, they help out, and they do community service. Where does the Highland Hills youth, where do they go in Highland Hills? Where are they sent? Where are they serving in the community in Highland Hills?
Right now, they're not, just because of the pandemic. So we haven't done
Before
that
the pandemic.
in about 3 years. I think since then, Janine, have we had kids from Cuyahoga?
The last we had them work at, is it BurgerFi? Well, BurgerFi was one company that we had youth work in. They also were working in, it wasn't a Goodwill, but something similar to a secondhand store, and I can't think of the
So
name.
it wasn't in Highland Hills that they were doing the community service or volunteering?
I think the warehouse that they worked at, I think it is in Highland Hills or one of the local communities, but we can get an answer to that
We can
question.
get, we can.
Because Highland Hills is very small, it's only got a population of about 1,200, and the current homes that are there right now were built after the facility was already there.
Right.
Highland Hills is a very, very tiny village, it only became a village in 1992.
It may not have been. Normally what happens is we get projects, often, the director mentioned our advisory board will bring projects to us to say that they have a need in the community. We'll vet the project, see if it matches up with the skills of the youth and just security and all that sort of thing to decide whether or not it's good. Oftentimes, some volunteer projects they come to us, right? And so we do things inside the facility that somehow will benefit and be a restorative justice project for the outside.
So this would be new for the youth, it's specifically in this particular facility. You're doing volunteer, you're doing community service.
No, they always do, they're doing community service every day.
Outside the facility?
Yeah, some of them are in.
Right now, no.
Okay.
Currently, we don't have anybody leaving the facility on any projects to date.
I think some of those questions, I think you had mentioned, they're building bicycles inside their facilities and to giving them to needies. They're doing blankets to give to some of.
I heard that.
So
You're
that
wondering
was-
about
that
outside
was-
of the secure
Outside the
perimeter.
facility, you emphasized the other two facilities.
Yep.
I think what our community is most concerned about is the Highland Hills community, or the facility. The other two facilities are not coming to Bedford. The Highland Hills one would be coming to Bedford.
Yeah, just for clarification, the presentation we do all of that at all three of our facilities. We have had kids at our Highland Hills facility go out into the community. Particularly, I know there's a warehouse that kids work at, and I thought it was in Highland Hills, but we'll find out for sure. But we haven't had kids go off because of the pandemic. And we hope to get that, as soon as things open up well enough, we'll get the kids back in the community. But we'll get that opportunity, or that information for you. And we're gonna look for opportunities here in Bedford, if there's needs here, that's what we wanna partner with our communities. Make sure our kids can give back.
I just had one quick question, and you could have answered it because I did come a little bit late. But what is all this gonna cost us? Because inevitably, everything that happens in Bedford, or doesn't happen, ends up costing us. So what is it gonna mean for all of us? Like, you're gonna get revenue, what does it mean for us? Because we're the ones, if their crime rate goes up, or things start to happen, or there's trouble, we're the ones that are gonna pay the price as victims, and this and that, but what's...
We've, as Chief mentioned earlier, we did a lot of record requests. We've contacted dispatch centers. chief spoke to the chief in Highland Hills and the chief in Massillon. Local, there will be absolutely no strain based on the information we've received on our local safety forces, police and fire. I think the quote from the chiefs was, "We honestly don't know they're there."
Okay, but do we have the overall of property values, insurance, everything, do we know anything of what's gonna happen to your people that live in this city? It's just an overall question, like, property value's gonna go down, or insurance rate's gonna go up?
And again, I'm not gonna pretend to be an expert on that. I don't believe there will be an impact in property value. I'm looking at the property values of the residential homes that abut their property now. They were ranging from, and again, I only, as I mentioned, checked a few of them. You know, there was some that were 90, there were some up to like 165. So, and that is, their backyard is their land.
So we're not gonna have like a surprise levy that we need hundreds of thousands of dollars to run this facility or anything of the sort, right?
No.
This is state run, it is not run by any of the
One
towers.
second, hold on. Frank, what was that?
This is a state-run facility, this is not
Okay.
anything run by the city of Bedford.
Okay.
What we were concerned about was services being affected if we had to respond to things. That was looked at earlier and found to be pretty much non-existent, so that was very good. So those are the answers we had earlier. We looked at values of properties around that facility, and we found that they were very much higher than even Bedford has at this point. So you can't say that there's a correlation of value dropping or anything like that with that facility. But that is a concern. We looked at it, and feel free to look at it online. Go ahead and take a look at those things. I'm sure you'll find a wide variety of price range like you would do in any street that you have, depending on how you maintain your property. So all that comes together.
Thank you.
But I don't think you'll see anything negative. Insurance-wise, it should have no effect whatsoever. Mostly that comes from our own services and what we provide. Fire, by the way, has done an excellent job of increasing from a Category 4 since I got here to Category 2, which has actually helped your insurance rates. So there's a lot of things that actually went in our favor over the years and the decades I've been here. So, good question.
Thank you.
One more question?
One last comment. Thank you, folks, for coming out to Bedford.
Appreciate it.
I personally would like to see your company and establishment here. I think you all stand for something great for our kids, so thank you.
Thank you.
And just wrapping up, I just want to review the timeline. Should we get that application? It could be, obviously this would have to go in front of planning. And then ultimately, that recommendation will go in front of city council. So there's still a couple meetings that if you think of a question or a comment, you can attend those. And grab one of our cards. Feel free to contact myself. And again, I'm just kind of following back to, the first item that came to our mind was we're going to collect as much facts as possible. And, this administration and Mayor Coachy and all of council, we're going to make a decision for what's best for our residents and businesses here. And we've always done that. We'll continue to do that. And we'll do our due diligence. And I want to thank Ohio Department of Food Services for coming out and giving us our primary, the other primary goal was to have everybody here and watching to hear it from them. Not Mike or Mayor Coachy or council or the administration. We wanted you to be able to ask them your questions directly. So if something would come up, if you have a question, get it to us. If we don't have that answer, if we didn't ask it already, we will contact them.
Sounds good.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you all.
Thank you.